Alright, today we're going to be going into detail on the retest variation long and the retest variation short setups. And there's this document here. It's in the Facebook group now with the exact rules and some examples, but today we're going to be, I'd urge you to download this. Today we're going to be going through some examples and we're going to go into some detail. So anyway, this setup is 3 elements. You look for element 1, and then you look for element 2, and then you look for element 3. And when you've got those, then the setup is complete. So let's, first of all, I've pulled some random results from this Google Docs spreadsheet, which is my trading results. And you can see that it's just got all my trades in it. And what it has is the setup name, and we're looking for RTVs. And there's screenshots here. So this spreadsheet is going to be really invaluable to you in learning the system. So even if you didn't have anything else from me and you had this spreadsheet, you could probably figure out the whole system given enough time and effort. So anyway, so what I've done is I clicked a bunch of random screenshots off here, and we're going to go through them. Now, some of these are losing trades because it's my pet hate when, guys pretend that, they only ever get winners, or it's like a super high win rate. It's not. It's about 60%, right? So there's winners as well as losers, and we're going to treat them all equally and do some examples. So let's look at the rules again. For a long setup, it's a touch of the lower Bollinger Band, standard Bollinger parameters. 2, a higher close without breaking the Bollinger Low. And then 3, a lower close without breaking the Bollinger Low. Now, what does that look like? That looks like, this is a sell. Let's find a buy. Okay. That one's a little complicated to explain. That one's also a little complicated to explain. Here's a nice, easy... Okay. So you can see here, we have a Bollinger touch. And what we need is 2 things. First of all, we need at least one higher close. Higher than what? Higher than the close before it. So you can see, and that close, that has to happen without breaking the Bollinger Low. So here in the first bar, we have a higher close. We have another higher close, which is superfluous, but we need it. So we have 3 elements. Element 1, Bollinger Band touch. Element 2, a higher close without breaking that Bollinger Band low. We have that. Then element 3 is a lower close. Lower than what? Lower than the close in the bar before it, which we have right here. Now at this point, the setup is complete, and we place an order to go long at the nearest half pip or full pip above this bar high, which is a little bit above here. We place our stop loss at the nearest half pip or whole pip below this low. Now, you can see in this example, price has not broken up above this high. So we enter on a stop or a stop limit order if price breaks this high. But it hasn't happened. We get another bar. So what do? Is we recalculate our position size, which I'm going to cover later, and we're going to enter long here with our stop loss here, and it hits the target further up. Now, interestingly enough, you can see that immediately after it, it painted the same setup in reverse. We have a touch of the Bollinger Band. We have 1 or more lower closes without breaking the Bollinger Band high. We have, that's element 1, element 2, element 3 is a higher close, which we have here. So we place an order to go short at the nearest half pip below this low, with a stop loss up here at the nearest half pip or full pip above the high. Just as before, where it wasn't entered here, we haven't broken to the downside here, so we move our entry up to below the low of this bar, and we finally get entry here, and it starts running away. Right, let's look at some more examples. So here we have a trade I took a couple of days ago. We have a touch of the lower Bollinger. We need a higher close without breaking the low of this Bollinger Band touch bar. So as soon as we break this low, the whole setup is off the table and we start again. So you can see here, we started looking for a setup, but then immediately after, the low was broken, and So immediately after we broke the low, and so finished looking for the setup, immediately after broke the low again. Now we have a Bollinger Touch element 1, element 2 a higher close, element 3 is a lower close. You can see this close is lower than this close. How do we play this trade? We place an order to go long and a stop at the nearest half pip above here, right where my mouse is. Place a stop loss at the low, and you can see it runs away. Make sense? All right, let's keep moving. Here's a losing trade. I think it's good to. I think it's good practice to not lie to ourselves and pretend all our trades are going to be winners. Here, we have a touch of the Bollinger Band. We have a element 1. We have a lower close without breaking this high. We have a higher close. The setup is complete here. We place an order to go short right here, which is never filled, and then we move it up to below the low of this bar. So we go short here, stop loss here, and I think it just stops us out here. Remember taking this. All right, let's look at some more. All right. Same thing here. We have element 1, touch of the Bollinger Band, a higher close and a lower close. We would place an order to go long here with a stop loss here, which is never triggered. And then as soon as price breaks this low, the whole setup is off the table. Because remember, we're retesting this low, and then we wait for the setup to set up again. And here it sets up again. We have a touch of the Bollinger Band, element 1. We have a higher close, another higher close, irrelevant. And then we have a lower close. So we place an order to go long here. Our stop loss is here. And you can see it went up, went down, and then came up and hit our target. All right, let's look at one more. Okay, another losing trade. So we have a Bollinger Band touch, a higher close, another higher close. So we have element 1, element 2, we need element 3. We have a lower close here, so we place an order to go long here, which is never filled. We move our order to the nearest half pip or full pip above this high. Now, I happen to remember that this bar, even though it broke the high, didn't go high enough to trigger the trade. And here, we move our order entry down to here, and we got long here and was immediately stopped out. It was a annoying trade. All right, let us look at a couple more. Actually, let's look at some price action right now, and let's see what's happening in the Euro USD, and let's see if we can identify a couple. Let's find some that are easy to. Okay. Some that are easy to see. Here we have a touch of the lower Bollinger, we have a higher close, and then a lower close, all without breaking this low here. So you can see that the high here is up here. The high here is 1.09149. Now, an easy way to remember this, if you keep reading out all these big long numbers, 1.09149, you're just going to get confused as hell. So what I do, and what I recommend you do, is just read the last three numbers. And the last three numbers are 149, but instead of reading it as 149, I read it as 14.9. So this is 14.9, the nearest half pip or full pip above 14.9 is 50. So we enter at 15, our stop loss, The low is 1.09132, but instead of that, I'll read it as 13.2. So the nearest half pip below is 13. So we're entering at 19, stop loss is 13, we're risking 6 pips. That's how I do it in my head. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Now let's go through this math again a few more times. So let's look at the short trade and then the long trade. So we have touch of the Bollinger, lower close, higher close. Our low here is 1.09172 or 17.2. So our entry point is 17, which is never hit. The next bar, the low, is 17.3, so our entry point is still 17. Here, the low is 173 as well, so our entry point is still 17. So our entry point is 17 pips. Our stop loss is the nearest half pip or full pip above 1.09219, which I read as 21.9, so it's 22. So our entry point is 17. Our stop loss is 22. We're risking 5 pips, and we get short here. Our stop loss is here, and you can see it hits our target down here before something very common happens, which is we reverse. Now we have a touch of the Bollinger, element 1. Element 2, higher close. Element 2, higher close. Waiting on a lower close. So we place our entry to go long at the nearest half pip above 15 pips, which is 15.5 pips. So we place an entry to go long 15.5, which is here. And our stop loss is at 10.5. So 15.5 for 10.5, we're risking 5 pips. That order is never filled, and we remove the order down to here. So we're entering on a stop. So you can enter using a stop order just like a stop loss, but you can use a stop to get into a trade. So here our high is 14.6, so our entry point is 15, and our stop loss is 10.5, so we're risking 4.5 pips here. So here we get long here, our stop loss is here, and you can see it runs away and gets us a nice profit. Same thing here. So we've got the sell setup version. So we have a touch of the Bollinger, element 1. We have a lower close, 2 of them in fact. We have a higher close. We place an order to go short here, stop loss is here, and then we move that up to here, to the nearest half pip or full pip below the low of this bar. This bar is 18.2, so our entry point is 18, and our stop loss here is 21.1 plus up to the nearest half pip, which is 21.5. So we're entering at 18, our stop loss is 21.5. So we're risking 3.5 pips. We go short here, our stop loss is 18.5. You can see that it gets to a high of 21.2 and our stop loss is 21.5. So our stop loss is never hit, and then our target is hit. And we have a reversal trade which doesn't work down the bottom. So we touch the lower Bollinger, we have a higher close. All in the same bar, we have element 1, element 2, element 3. Set up complete, we place an order to go long here. It's never filled, we move it down to the next bar. We place an order to go long here. Never filled, move it down to the next bar, we go long here, and it is filled. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a target before it stops us out. Let's have a look for some more. Okay. Here's one. We have touch of the Bollinger, lower close. Element 1, element 2. Higher close, place an order to go short here. Another higher close, we place an order to go short. Our low here is 17.3, so we place our order to go short at 17. We place our stop loss at 19. So we're risking 2 pips, which is not very much, and we get a quick winner. Let's see what else we have here. Alright, same thing here. Short setup. We have a touch of the upper Bollinger. We need 1 or more lower closes without breaking this high here. We have many lower closes, 4 of them. Now we need a higher close. We place an order to go short here, which is never filled. We move it up to the nearest half pip below the next bar low, never filled. Move it up to the nearest half pip below the next bar low, and this is entry at 20.5, and the stop loss is at 27.5. So we're risking 7 pips. And what I'd like to point out is that your risk reward gets progressively better as we go on. So it's very advantageous to do, and we're short here, stop loss here, quick target. Okay, one more. We have a touch of the Bollinger, element 1. Element 2, higher close without breaking this Bollinger touch low. Another higher close, then a lower close. Place an order to go long at the nearest half pip above here, which is never filled. We move it down to above here and recalculate the position size. You can see that the high here is 9.1, so we enter at 9.5, and our stop loss is at 2. So we're risking 7.5 pips, and easy winner. All right, I hope you can see and work through some examples. We'll be going over this again because I think it's important. If there's one setup that is really going to change your life, it's this one. I've used it in all kinds of different trading systems, in all kinds of things. Very, very useful in trading system design. Very useful for top and bottom picking. It's 50% of everything we do, so it makes sense that we get this one really in the head right, and let's get all this basic knowledge into our heads so that we can spend the masterclass working on really advanced stuff. All right, guys, looking forward to teaching you. See ya.